Um, all right, so think about ways in which you have. So we'll start with something um, positive. Like a habitual small little pattern that you have in your life. Could be like a daily habit of some kind, where you really feel like it's not this huge thing, but it's a small thing that you do on the regular that really supports your well-being. So think about that for a moment. That it could be something very simple about a daily habit that you may not even be thinking that you do. It's so unconscious that really supports your well-being. So as you close your eyes, let's contemplate this first. A small, tiny habit that supports your well-being. And you probably have a million of them that you're not even aware of because maybe they're so habituated into your day. And whatever you're finding, whatever you're discovering, let's just sit with a moment of gratitude for the ways in which you have made a habit out of something that's really good for you. Sometimes we can get so caught up with the habits that we want to change that we forget to hold space in gratitude for the habits that are established and are serving us well. Now, just like these beautiful, positive habits, some can be so unconscious that we don't even recognize them. Same can be true with subtle, small things that are challenging to us. Maybe it's a pattern of the way you sit at your desk or in front of your computer, or perhaps it's a way that it doesn't matter. You could think of a million different examples. So for yourself, think of something that it might be a habit that you do that causes you just a teeny bit of harm, not big harm. We're not talking about like this huge life altering things that happen, but just small little habits that might be better changed. Okay, it could be, you could think of it skeletally, like a pattern of movement that causes chronic discomfort in your body. It could be a pattern of the mind that causes chronic discomfort in the mind. It could be a pattern of isolation or a pattern of communication that you would like to change. So, whatever it is, try to think about something, uncover something that is small, but that is consistent, that contributes to something that doesn't make you feel well. And when you breathe and contemplate this, notice, the change even in this moment of how your mind body is compared to just a moment ago when we were celebrating in gratitude something really great that we were doing for us. When we discover something that's causing just a little turbulence within us, we can have a reaction in the mind and in the breath. So maybe it's something that your yoga practice can help you air out and shift. Maybe it's not, but let's just come into awareness. So now find a comfortable seat if you're not already there, so that you can start to align into the breath body. So as you close your eyes and settle your awareness into this moment. So let's kind of move away from the thought processes of patterns, but instead bring yourself in with the mind to the awareness of this moment, the body in this moment. Fill yourself up with breath, empty yourself out, and recognize that every moment is a fresh new moment to observe yourself new, to create choice. And although habits have patterns that are entrenched in your mind body, we have opportunities to shift anything we want. on your shoulders to soften. Feel the rising of the heart just a bit, enough to um, support this outward, upward. I'm living fully in this moment and in relationship to the world. Let your breath wash over you, be a friend to you. And when you're ready, bring your palms together at your heart and bow. Let's offer an intention. Maybe it's just an intention of gratitude, of awareness of self. Maybe it's an intention around a subtle shifting of the way we think or the way we move in our body. Release your hands. And let's find our way coming onto our back. All right, so as you stretch out and lengthen in the body, see what it feels like to have an awareness of just that changing shape of your body in space. Lengthening through your arms and your legs. And reach and reach and reach. So one side a little longer, the other side a little longer, and just come into some opening in the body. And draw the knees into your chest and let your low back open a little bit. Maybe a bit of rocking. All right, let's circle your knees, kind of rolling in one direction. Rolling in another direction. We're going to do a little work today to open up the hamstrings and the glutes. And, I know I'm not alone in this, that many other people have this experience in their body that when you forward bend, so now let's open up the knees to the third way. We kind of open our hips up. But when forward bending happens, a lot of times anyone who might have a little trouble with some disc space or some misalignment of the vertebrae in the spine, forward bends can sometimes be trying on the spine. We have to be very mindful to have that support system built in to encourage the discs to stay fluffy and spacious. Let's hug your right knee into your chest and stretch your left leg long on the ground. Roll around in your ankles and your feet. And just enjoy your warming of the body. So as we do some forward folding today, let's be very mindful of stabilizing our core around our spine so that we're not smushing. We want to have some disc spaces that even when we bend forward, let's switch sides, left knee in. When we bend forward, obviously the tendency will be for the anterior, the front portion of our vertebrae to compress and the back part of our vertebrae to open, where the discs open up in the back and compress in the front. And we want to minimize that as much as possible and move this pattern from our, kind of strike it from the record a little bit so that we can have a sense of moving forward without our spine compressing in the front. We want to have as much spaciousness as we possibly can throughout the discs as we move. All right, let's stretch open. Stretch to a star, reaching outward. Big open space. And when your exhale comes, knees in, chin to chest. Now, this doesn't mean you never round your spine. Rounding your spine can be a really beautiful thing. But when we are putting weight down upon that, we want to be very mindful and careful. So stretch open to a star again. Exhale, feel a rounding of the spine here. And then release your head down onto the ground. Bring your arms out to the side, feet hip width apart, and let's windshield wiper our knees. Warming up the twisting of our spine as we go back and forth, left and right. And we'll take a fuller twist. So feet on the ground. Let's lift the hips, scoot them over to the right. Knees come up. Let's drop them to the left. And as you drop your knees, open up your chest. Enjoy the thoracic spine having some beautiful space. Maybe turn your head to the right if it feels good. A full breath here. Coming back to center. Let's scoot the hips over to the left. Knees come up and drop them right. Big breath here, spreading open your wings. Enjoy the twisting spine all the way up to your neck. And then come back to center. One more time, a big star on the ground. Roll around in your ankles, wiggle your fingers, roll your wrists. And then knees into your chest and let your back round a moment. Okay, let's come over to your side and come on to all fours. And before you start moving in cat-cows, let's just have a moment to let our spine find neutral territory. So when we're horizontal like this, either in a supine position, face up like we just were on the ground, or in a prone position like this where we're face down, our spine is having a neutrality with gravity. We're not having compression from our crown to our tail. Gravity's pressing down on our spine evenly along our spine. And this can be very soothing for the spine. So just notice what your vertebrae and your discs feel like. And let's start to move through some cat-cows. And of course, cat-cows, this is a perfect example of how arching and rounding the spine can be very helpful and good for the spine. It's not like we never want to have the back body open. And of course, the same is true for the anterior spine. It's not like we don't ever want those discs to spread. We do. We want to do it in a way that gravity is not compressing down on our spine while we're opening up the fronts and backs of our discs. All right, so just enjoy. This is such a good neutral territory for the spine. It's a great place to experiment with flexion and extension. There's not a lot of harm that can be done for most spines. Breathing well. And then take a ride in any plane of movement you want. Maybe you want to wag your tail. Maybe you want to circle your hips. Maybe you want to get your shoulders and your ribs involved. Maybe your head wants to move. So try to think less, feel more, and breathe. Come to neutral again, and you can always come onto your fists if your hands are bothering you. And let's just sink our hips over to the right as far as they can go, where you're still weight bearing on your four limbs. Just stick your hip way out to this side. And then come back to center and stick your hip way out to the other side. And just notice, how does this make you feel? Or do you have more movement going in one direction or the other? Is there a different sensation in your body? One more time each side, all the way over to the right. And then all the way over to the left. All right, curl the toes under, stretch back towards child's pose, and start to open up at the very bottom of that back line. So the soles of the feet. So we have, a fascial line that connects from the bottom of our toes, across the bottom of our feet, wrapped around our Achilles, the calves, the hamstrings, the glutes, the muscles along our spine, on the sides of our spine, all the way up to the base of our skull, wrapping around our head to our eyebrows. So start at the very bottom of this line at the soles of the feet. You can rock a little bit onto your pinkies and then a little toward your big toes. Maybe your ankles touch and then spread. And then let's go ahead and release that and give your toes a little smack. Just let your toes ease up. And then let's stretch back towards child's pose. As you come back, reaching your hips back toward the heels, discover what your natural tendency is. How far do you like your knees apart? We kind of go with what usually feels best, but notice, is this a habit that is unconscious? Maybe something would be better for your back. Maybe your knees a little closer or a little farther might feel more comfortable for your spine. So don't assume what you naturally habitually do is necessarily the best pattern for your body. Try to have every pose that we do be fresh and new, where you're discovering the pose as if you were doing it for the first time. Okay, let's walk the hands over to the right side so we get that side body stretch. Of course, we're going to work with the back line, but the back line doesn't live in isolation. So see if you can feel, obviously you might feel this in your ribs and your armpit, but see if you can also feel it along the smaller muscles next to your vertebrae, your multifidus that connect one vertebrae to the next on the sides of your spine, and also the deeper low back muscle, that quadratus lumborum that connects your ribs to your pelvis on one side. And come back to center and walk the hands over the other way. Feeling that sense of opening again, those subtle little habits that we have in moving our body that we've developed since we were babies. Simple things. The way you always cock your head, the way you always take the stairs. All these little things impact the way our spine moves. And then come back to center. Come up onto all fours and just let your spine loosen. Sometimes child's pose can be a big pose, so wag your tail, nourish your spine in whatever way you want. Curl the toes under and lift yourself to a dog pose. As you find the ground, so you're going to find some rooting of your hands and your feet. Maybe you want to pedal your feet and start to let that feeling that you had in the soles of your feet start to come travel up the back of your leg. Move kind of slowly at first so you can really feel as you drop one heel and your other knee bends, what are your hips doing? Do you want to come offline with your pelvis? Try not to let anything be restricted. Let movement happen. All right, and then find some stillness. And again, maybe your feet want to be a little wider apart. Maybe they want to be a little closer. Try not to just live in habit, but try to notice moment by moment what's going to create best space and freedom and support in my body right now. And then we're going to come down back onto our knees. Come up onto your shins. Inhale, reach the arms up to the sky, a big open chest, and then back. Child's pose, but your arms down at your sides. Let your back have a slight round in it. And then we're going to come up onto all fours one more time. If your hands are getting a little uncomfortable, you can always take your forearms on blocks to do this, or you can take your fists on the ground if you're getting a little tired of having your hands on the ground. Bird dog, stretch your left leg straight back behind you. Pulse a couple times so you feel the strength living in your glutes and hamstrings, not just the stretch that we've felt so far. Now integrate your core, hug your spine with your muscles in the front and the back. And then reach your other arm out in front of you, thumb up, toes are down. So integrate into the center body. That hugging of your transverse abdominis around you, wrapping like a corset, is such an important aspect of protecting your spine when we bend forward. And then release your hand and your knee down onto the ground. Switch sides, start with just your leg. Right foot out, toes down, maybe pulse a couple times. Do your hamstrings and your glutes feel as turned on and alive as they did on the other side? More so, less so? And now bring your arm out in front. Stabilize with your core. Wrap your spine with your muscles. There's a lot of strength in those multifidi along your vertebrae here, but marry that with the strength of your core. Release your hand down onto the ground. And let's come onto our back just for a moment. I promise we'll get up in a bit. Feet on the ground. Pelvis neutral. What does pelvis neutral feel like to you? Is your low back compressed onto the ground? Can you have just a natural slight little curve, not a big one, but a slight little softening of the weight of your body in your low back on the ground? All right, so let's go ahead and imagine our tailbone, our sacrum, kind of being this heaviness on the ground right now. And then isometrically, see if you can drag your sacrum and your tail toward your shoulders. And hopefully you'll feel some muscles in your low back turn on here. And then relax. So we're not doing a pelvic tilt where we're posterior and anterior tilting the spine. We're keeping the pelvis kind of grounded and just scrub the sacrum toward the shoulders. Try to let this ripple all the way up your back. So it's not just condensed in the lumbar spine, but can you feel that energy of those multifidi all the way up to your shoulder blades? And then relax. Once again, don't go into a posterior tilt, just neutral. Just let your pelvis relax on the ground. And then one last time, let's press the sacrum and tail down into the ground and drag it toward your shoulders. See if you can ripple this up the spine so you feel those multifidus light up along your spine. All right, and then relax back to neutral. Windshield wiper your knees a little bit left and right. And just sense, how's your back doing? Some of this stuff, if you have low back trouble, can be a little aggravating. Okay, so we just want to be very mindful of what we're doing. All right, now we're going to grab a block and stick it between our thighs. So you can have it middle width or narrow width. You can have it close to your pelvis or closer to your knees. Just kind of find what's going to allow you to experiment with different ways of holding the block that will allow you to really feel where we're going with this. The feet are hip width apart, grounded. Four corners of the feet grounded. Let your arms be heavy on the ground. Let the heads of the arm bones relax. Let the weight of your head relax. Take a deep breath in and let's just sense the spine. Do you feel the natural low back curve? Is there a sense that your spine is maintaining its neutral curvature? As you take a deep breath in, find your exhale, and we're going to ground the outer feet and hug the block. And then as you inhale, release. I find this to be easiest for me anyway, with the block at the middle width, right at my knees. But for some people, having this at the inner thighs, at the narrow width is better. So I want you to experiment, do a couple of each so that you feel what's going to allow you to sense into those deep core muscles, the transverse abdominis, your corset. So as you ground the outer feet, on the exhale, hug the block and feel your deep core turn on. As you inhale, relax. Now remember, this muscle wraps around your back as well. It's not just at your belly. And so you should feel the tension, the corseting wrapping around you on the exhales. And you might even become fatigued in the back of your body before the front of your body. So again, heavy head, heavy feet, heavy pelvis. We're hugging on the exhale, keeping the outer feet intact on the ground, letting there be a release on the inhale. So we're not just anchoring and having no relaxation. We want to have that vacillation between engagement and release with the breath. Okay, so the exhales are where we engage and the inhales are where we release. Make sure you've tried a couple of different positions of the block so you can sense, usually when the block is closer to the pubic bone, we tend to activate our pelvic floor differently. We might feel the lower fibers of the transverse abdominis. When you have your block higher up, you may feel this more kind of on the outskirts of your transverse abdominis. That's how it feels to me. But everybody's different. So do both so you can really sense the global nature of this transverse abdominis as you ground the outer feet and hug on your exhales, releasing on your inhales. All right, so this muscle and what we've woken up so far, the muscles along our spine, the multifidus, and this transverse abdominis are two muscle groups that really support these lower spine when we are bending in all directions, not just forward. But can you feel alive? All right, so now let's let go of the block, straighten your legs for a moment, and just sense the center of your body. Find your breathing. The last thing that kind of gets involved with this forward bending that we're going to do in a bit is our breath. So as you inhale, feel expansive, let your organs expand. And as you exhale, feel the natural drawing down and in of the diaphragm, the transverse abdominis, the muscle we were just working with the block between our legs, and the diaphragm work in harmony. As we inhale, the transverse abdominis relaxes so that the organs can stretch and move and open to accommodate the diaphragm dropping down. And as we exhale, the transverse abdominis assists with the diaphragm drawing back up toward the ribs. One more breath. You can spend a lifetime trying to unhinge breathing patterns, talk about subtle patterns that we might use for help or harm. The breathing way we breathe under all circumstances really does impact the well-being of our body and mind. All right, stretch back towards child's pose, relax your back a little bit, and let's get moving a little bit more here. So when you're ready, lift to dog pose and feel that extension in the body. Let's have a little bit of movement of the feet again. It's our, great opportunity to feel that full back line of the body. When you're ready to be still, reach your femur bones up and back. Feel the heart extend toward those femur bones. Feel the opening of the back body. Let your head relax downward. Stretch your heels down, lift your sit bones up. And then walk your feet forward and come to Uttanasana. Bend from your knees. Inhale for a halfway lift. Spine is long. Exhale. And relax again. Push off your feet, rising on up. Everybody's different with the press up or the round up. You have to figure out what works for your body. One thing I'll just review here for forward bending. When we round our spine and bend forward like this puts a lot of pressure on our low back and on our SI joints. If we bend our knees, it allows us to tip our pelvis. So now the forward bend is coming from the hip joints instead of from the low back. So I can go into a much deeper position with my spine staying in a neutral place versus my back rounding. So remember that anterior tilt to the pelvis, where we shift our pelvis over our femur bones so that our tailbone goes in the same direction as our spine. When we bend forward like this, our tailbone's going down and our spine is trying to go forward. Our tail and our spine are moving in opposite directions. Whereas when we lift our tail and tip forward from there, our tail and our spine are going in the same direction. So we want to roll our pelvis over femur bones and let our sacrum move with the rest of our vertebrae. Come to the front of your mat and stand in Tadasana. Unlock your knees and just have a moment to notice gravity. So now here we are with gravity kind of coming down our spine, and we might notice that we have to kind of have a little rebound. We have to, if we sunk, so let go of your energy and just imagine the sinking that happens. Maybe you lean into one leg, maybe you lock out a knee, maybe you slump your shoulders, maybe you relax your belly, maybe your head, you kind of jut your chin forward. There's so many ways that we can slouch in our body where gravity just kind of wins, right? And it kind of presses down on us. Now see what you can do to react against that gravity, where we have a subtle rebounding from the earth through our body. So unlock your knees. Feel a responsiveness in your pelvis, in your breath. Feeling that sense that the heart is lifting without compressing the back of your body. Have slight subtleness to your core strength. And just notice how intrinsically alive you are. That, the scaffolding of your body, the fascial web of your body is really alive and creating a tensile strength to not resist gravity, but work with gravity so that we're not being overwhelmed by gravity. Okay, so if we lock out joints, we lose these relationships. So lock your knees out for a minute, push your pelvis forward, lock your low back. And just notice, did you lose your intrinsic relationship with your breath and with the earth? Okay, draw your pelvis back or your femur bones back a little bit, unlock your knees, have a teeny bit of a bounce. Have you regained your relationship with your breath and with the ground? Inhale, reach your arms up in the air, and then exhale and float forward. Remember to bend your knees as much as you need to so your pelvis rolls over your femur bones. Can you feel that your sacrum is traveling with your spine instead of against the direction of your spine? Inhale for a halfway lift, growing long. Now we have support under our hands, so take your hands on blocks instead of your hands on legs, so that you have a directional support underneath your shoulders. Back to this relationship with gravity. Here we are, just like we were on all fours. Feel that your spine is no longer taking that gravitational burden. Femur bones moving way, way back. Lift your sit bones. Can you feel that slight anterior tilt of the pelvis? Imagine your pubic bone passing through the inner thighs. Stretch open your feet. Notice that you can open up the back line of the body from your glutes down to the soles of your feet without your spine having strain. And then bend your knees and let your spine do the opening now. So let gravity help you kind of fall, waterfall towards the ground. Okay, let's bring our hands down onto the ground. Come back to dog pose. Long, spacious spine. Let's take our feet wide. Experiment with different widths. So as you take your feet wide on the ground, maybe you want to turn your toes in so you feel that release of the inner groins toward the back. And just notice a subtle difference in how your spine is stretching, how your hamstrings are stretching when your legs are wide and your toes are turned in. And then bring your feet back to neutral, hip width apart, and just see what's here. Let's come forward into a plank, holding yourself steady. Integrate into the center. Here's an opportunity to feel that corset, that transverse abdominis, and those multifidus supporting your back. Let's place our knees onto the ground and find the earth. Roll the shoulders a few times. Let's inhale, come to a cobra pose, a big open heart. Exhale and melt back down. Let's see if we can activate those multifidus like when we were scrubbing our sacrum. Engage through the back muscles, support with your core. Reach your tailbone toward your knees to minimize the compression in your lumbar spine. Feel all those muscles turn on and hug your back. And then exhale and release. Come back down. Come up onto all fours. Move your spine around any way you want. We're going to bring our right foot forward in front. Back knee on the ground for a moment. Let your hip flexors stretch. Breathing well. Lift your back knee up off the ground. Sometimes coming into asymmetry in the pelvis is a really nice thing. So let's enjoy the length of our spine. Use the support of your core. As we begin to straighten the leg like we always do or often do, and then bend our knee, can you pay attention to your core supporting your spine? To keeping that long spine and not rounding in the lumbar back. as we open up the hamstring. How's your breath? Back and forth can be such a nice, beautiful thing. All right, ground your legs. Inhale, rising up. Another opportunity to feel that corset along our spine. Support with your front body, support with those muscles along your back. Finding your breath. Exhale, walk your back foot forward, bend your knees, let your pelvis roll over your femur bones. Be congruent with your tail and the rest of your spine moving in one direction. Inhale for a halfway lift. Feel the length of your spine. Exhale and melt again. Step your other foot back, put your knee down on the ground. Enjoy the asymmetry. This can be really nice for your back. This can be really nice for your hips. Try to see what it feels like to have the hip flexor open. As we go ahead and lift your back knee up off the ground and we start to move, be very mindful that your back is not just popping into a round and then arching and popping into a round and arching. As you bend and as you straighten that front knee, can you feel the support wrap your corset around your spine so that the movement, obviously we'll get a little bit of movement across our spine, but really we're isolating as best as we can the stretch of this pose to be in the glutes and the hamstrings. And back and forth can be so good for our spine. All right, and then when you're ready, ground yourself, find your core. Hug in, imagine the block. So hug to the midline with your inner knees. Find that block pose we did earlier on our back. And then as you rise up, can you feel that intrinsic relationship of breath and the ground? So we're not sinking, we're not falling into our low back, but we're pushing off the ground with that front foot and the back foot to feel that intrinsic support of our core, but really of our whole fascial body, supporting the lift of our spine off the pelvis instead of the sinking of our spine onto our pelvis. The more we can access this, supportive structure, the supportive structures around our core, any movement that we take, whether it's a forward bend, back bend, twisting, side bending, we're going to have a protection around our spine. Bring your hands down, step your front foot back. Dog pose again. Come forward into a plank. Feel that core support wrap around you. Knees onto the ground. Find here. Take a back bend of your choosing. What feels good? Use those multifidus muscles. Relax and melt back down. Come up onto all fours. Let's bring our hands onto blocks. We're going to bring our right foot forward to a lunge again. This time our back knee is going to come off the floor. We're going to shorten our stance, Parsvottanasana. Blocks come high, come to stand. Hands on hips. Feel the awakening of your core again. As we lift up, find that intrinsic relationship of breath and ground. Lifting, opening through our spine so we're not compressing. And then tip forward to where you can hold yourself. Okay, so it could be 2 inches, could be a foot, anywhere. Ground into your feet. Feel that your hamstring in that front leg is both stretching and engaging at the same time. So there's a lot of work in that front leg. Stretch through your spine. Can you feel your core support your spine? Can you feel that corset around you? And then come back up a little bit. And this time when we bring our hands down onto blocks, and you might want to stack your blocks to get extra height. You could also do this with your hands on furniture so that you're not going as deep. Okay, so any variation of this pose that is going to feel good, what we want to avoid is just sinking, just falling. So let's avoid this. Press into your feet. Maybe your legs need to go wider apart, left and right. See if you can feel the inner thighs roll back, the pubic bone pass through your hamstring or through your inner thighs. So you feel that anterior tilt to the pelvis a bit. Corset your spine, lengthen your spine. Feel that gravity has not as profound of an impact on you as it does when you're standing. And back foot comes forward, front foot comes back, changing sides. Come on up, bring your hands onto your hips. Lift maybe a little bit of a back bend here, again, supporting with your core. Find that intrinsic nature of unlocked joints yielding into the ground, the breath. And as you tip forward, corset the spine, only go as far as your body can hold the kind of intrinsic support systems around here. Hamstrings are going to be working a lot. And this is really should be a really nice feeling to have your hamstring lengthened and engaged. You know, that eccentric contraction is so different than a concentric contraction. Extend and lengthen your spine. And then come all the way back up. This time we'll come a little bit more forward. Hands can be on furniture, hands can be on blocks, blocks can be stacked. So try not to go too deep, because often when we go too deep, we end up just rounding our spine. Keep the elongation, the neutral low back, the slight anterior tilt of the pelvis. The sit bones lift, pubic bone passes through, inner thighs relax back, ground into the feet. Keep your hips square. Feel that extension that's supported by your core. So it's not like a sit-up-y kind of feeling. You know, your core wraps around your torso. Root into the big toe. That's part of that inner thigh spiral. You know, if we're leaning into the outer toe, we tend to push the pelvis forward, and you know, the pubic bone, the whole pelvis forward on the femur bones, round through the front big toe, inner thighs roll back. Notice if you just got a little more space to let your pelvis roll over your femur bone. All right, let's go ahead and relax. That last of the dog poses. Stretch your hands on the ground, feet back. Do you want your feet apart wide? Do you want your legs closer? Maybe you want your legs really wide. Okay, so just experiment. What makes your back feel good? You're gonna come down or come forward. So into a plank. So stabilize. You might need to bring your feet closer. Come down onto the ground all the way to the earth. One last back bend here. Open up your chest. Feel those multifidi and relax. Come back down. A nice way to feel them. Let's do this one more time. Hands on the ground like cobra. Draw your hands back. Elbows stay bent. Draw your elbows back. Engage your core. Press your pelvis into the ground. Lift up. Can you feel the muscles along your spine without compressing your back? And then relax. Come up onto all fours. One more time. Maybe hips stick out to one side and then the other. Maybe a child's pose. How's your back doing? We've done some sneaky forward bends. You know, we've been getting into those hamstrings and glutes and opening up our body while hopefully at the same time supporting your spine. But if you're vulnerable to low back challenges with forward folds, one should be super careful in the next pose we're about to do. All right, so we're gonna get up on the edge of a blanket. This will help us anterior tilt the pelvis so that, you know, we're rolling the pelvis forward a little bit instead of rolling the pelvis back, which is again that pushing out of the vertebrae in the back, which we're trying to avoid. All right, take your legs straight out in front of you. We're going to do Janu Shirshasana. So right leg straight, left knee is bent. You can put a block underneath your knee if you need some support. First, we're going to do this without a block. Now, because you're high on the edge of a blanket, if you're super high, like 2 blankets, you want to have a little rolled towel or something underneath your knee so that if your pelvis is way up and your heel's down and you're trying to get the back of your leg on the ground, your knee's going to hyperextend. So a little support underneath here if your pelvis is super high. Turn toward your straight leg, that little baby twist in there. Lengthen upward. First, just bring your hands down to the ground, or maybe if you can't reach the ground, onto blocks. Okay. So just like when we did that cobra pose where we were kind of dragging the hands back toward the pelvis, drag the hands or the finger pads or whatever you're touching back toward the pelvis so you can lift up using the strength of your back body. Now engage your core while you're here and start to come forward. So we're very engaged in the back of the body and the center body. You'll start to feel your hamstring and your glute open up. And then right when you get to your point where you're like, okay, that's as far as I'm going to go, then have a smidge of a relaxation by dropping your chin toward your chest. We're not letting go of the core engagement. We're staying engaged so we don't fall onto our leg. But we're going to draw the chin in so that the spine muscles get a little length too without losing the support of our core. And inhale and come back up. Stretch that leg straight. Bring your hands behind you, palms facing the ground, fingertips behind you. Open it up across your chest. And then we'll switch to the second side. Many times we can go through a forward bending being very mindless and where we're just kind of falling toward the ground and we wonder why our back hurts. Okay, so as you lift up, first we'll start with the finger pads on the ground or on blocks, whatever feels good. Okay. And we'll drag the fingers toward us so that we engage the muscles along our spine. Find your core. Draw your femur bone down. See if you can roll the pelvis over that femur bone as you start to come forward. Try not to lose your core. Stay in your breath. Flex your foot. Draw your femur bone down. When you get to the place where you're like, okay, that's where I'm going to be, you can lose a little bit of that pull back of your hands. Draw your chin toward your chest. Finding breath. Stay with your core. Try not to collapse and fall toward the ground. We're finding that intrinsic support. Pelvis is grounded, spine is reaching. How's your breath? And then come back up. Okay. Come out of the posture. We're going to do a supported bridge pose. So we put our pelvis back to neutral. Feet on the ground. Lift your hips up. Get the block underneath your pelvis. And just rest here. Now, if you're like me, where forward bends are very precarious, I often, my back hurts if I don't do them properly. Okay, so just notice, how are you? How is your back handling the forward bending that we've been doing? And breathing well. And now we're going to let gravity help us. So when you're ready, draw your knees toward your chest. So a little bit of traction now for the lumbar spine. We don't have to do so much work now to support our spine. And we're going to lift our legs straight up. Now, this is very similar to, Paschimottanasana, if we were doing the pose sitting on the floor, both legs straight out. But notice there's not a lot of tension for our spine because gravity is reversed. We are not having gravity press down from crown to tail. Gravity is spread out across our body. Feet down onto the ground. Lift your hips. Put your pelvis neutral on the ground. Maybe a little bit of windshield wipering, knees going left and right. Breathing well. Now grab a strap if you have one. Stay on your back. If you want to open up the back line of your body, but you struggle with forward bends, seated forward bends, doing them supine like this is a great way of opening up the backs of your legs without having to put a lot of strain on your back. And so I highly recommend supine forward folds versus seated forward folds if your back is vulnerable or you haven't quite figured out that core support system that we've been working on. All right, let's flex and point your toes while they're in that strap for a moment. And just feel the nature of the long spine here. Can you let the weight of your hands pulling on the strap give some weight down into your femur bones? Adjust a little bit. Maybe pull your feet a little further away, a little closer. Find the sweet spot for your low back. And then we'll turn this into a one-legged posture. Right foot in the strap, left foot is on the ground. Extending through your spine. Again, this is such a safe, good way, typically for most people, to open up the back line of their body without aggravating your back. So if you get at all, if some of the things have aggravated you, remember this, these two poses, 2 feet into the strap and 1 foot in the strap. Such a great way to daily have a routine of opening up the back line of your body without straining your spine. Now you can straighten your left leg on the ground, or you can keep your knee bent. Open things up. We'll go both directions to the sides now. So hold the strap in the right hand, opening up our inner thighs. As you stretch your right leg out to the right, ground through the left side of your body. Full breaths here. Notice how you can open up a lot of muscles of the hamstrings, the inner groins, without putting a lot of strain on your spine. And then lift that leg up again and bring your leg across to the other side. If you feel like using the strap is too much, you can also do this pose against a wall. So not so much this variation, but the leg straight up. So, you can stick your body through a door frame and put your right leg up on the wall while your left leg is kind of moving through a door frame. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But you can use a wall instead of a strap, which can sometimes make your pelvis relax even more. Okay, let's lift that leg straight back up in the air and take the strap away for a moment. Find neutral, feet on the ground or legs on the ground, your choice. Just let your back relax. Okay, and then let's switch sides. Left foot in the strap. Lift that left leg straight up in the air. Shoulders are soft, head is heavy. Feel that gravity is spread across your spine. Let the weight of the strap root your femur bone into the ground. See, if we were in a door frame right now, you could put your left leg up the wall, right leg through the door. Let's open up to the left, strap in the left hand, enjoy the openness across your hamstring, across your inner thighs. Stay grounded through the right side of your body. Feel the weight of your right hip. That leg straight back up, cross the leg over to the right, getting a stretch in the outer hip now. Breathing well. Strap off, feet on the ground. Feel the neutral spine. And scoot our hips over to the right, knees come up and drop them left. Maybe you want a little more stretch in the outer hips, so you straighten the top leg and grab your toe or your shin. Breathe deeply into the twist. Yep. Scoot your hips over to the other side, knees drop right. Turn your head, take a breath.
Maybe you want a little outer hip stretch, so you grab the left big toe with your peace fingers, knees stay together. Maybe you hold your pants or your outer shin. Maybe you're in a softer version with both knees bent. Relax to come out of the pose. What's the last thing that you need to do here? Do you want your knees to your chest? Do you want a happy baby pose to round that spine? Do you want to do a little rocking plow? Kind of let the whole back line open up a little bit. Do you want to do a reverse pigeon pose? Gosh, I want to do all of those things. Maybe you do too. And so maybe you do all of those things and you can just kind of join late for Shavasana. So whatever is feeling good in your body, remember this is the joy of the home practice. Shut your computer off right now or your phone and turn me on mute. Ignore me and just keep going. If there's something that your body needs, if you're exploring something in your body, great. And if you're ready for Shavasana, great. Okay, now you can maybe have some support underneath your knees. Maybe you'd rather be totally flat. So just kind of figure out what it is your body's needing right now. Soften and release into the ground. If you're still doing some postures, how do you feel? What are you exploring? Remember when you get to Shavasana that the breath is such a beautiful part of Shavasana. We can have this full depth of our inhales and a complete surrender of our exhales. And all the bones, especially your head and your pelvis that are heavy, let them weight themselves. And just breathing. Find your way onto your side first before coming up to a seat. And take a moment. Notice. As you come to a comfortable seat, let's take a moment to center ourselves again. Bring your palms together. And recognize that the more awareness you cultivate in your practice of present moment awareness, patterns in your body, patterns of your breathing, patterns of the mind, the more conscious we become, the more we have more agency for choice instead of habit. Let's offer our energy to another. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.